Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We want to be respectful of your time, and we appreciate your interest in the apprenticeship programs and Pasa's programming generally. Wanted to go through a few details here and some housekeeping things. We are going to be having everyone remain muted tonight, and we'll be taking questions throughout the session via our Q&A in the chat box. So for most of you, it should be at the bottom as an icon called chat that you can click on and open up and enter any questions at any point. We will have a live Q&A then at the end, where we'll be fielding questions that have come in, and then any new questions that you may have at that time. Like I said, please do remain on mute because the crosstalk and all of that can become a challenge very quickly. So we want to just make sure that we do that. Thank you for joining us. My name is Dan Dalton. I'm the Three Rivers Program Manager for Pasa, based out of Pittsburgh, and also the manager for the Diversified Vegetable Apprenticeship Program, which we'll be talking about shortly. My colleague Aaron DeLong is joining us from Chester County to talk about Dairy Grazing Apprenticeship as well. I think that's all we have as far as that goes. Aaron, if you want to share the slides.
You see that all right?
It's coming through. We're on Why Apprenticeship right now. If you want to go up to the general Pasa slide. Yep, very good. So just very briefly about Pasa, and this sort of comes into play a little bit with the apprenticeship, which is why we wanted to include it here. We were founded originally around our Sustainable Agriculture Conference. Recently changed names from the Farming for the Future to the just Sustainable Ag Conference. And it was an opportunity for farmers to get together and actually share and debrief on topics of interest, emerging issues, and things like that. And we try as an organization to remain really tethered to that farmer-to-farmer exchange model. So rather than having experts tell you what they think works, you're actually hearing from peers and professionals and experts, actual farmers who are able to tell you what does work for them. And the conference is central to that. Due to the COVID-19 quarantine issues and travel restrictions and just the challenges this year, our conference will be all online. It will be extended. Instead of its normal 4 days, it's going to actually be spread over about 3 weeks, starting in mid-January through early February. There's going to be lots of really great programming, and it'll be a really great opportunity to learn more about specific topics related to agricultural production in a whole range of fields. Typically, details on that start to come out around Thanksgiving, mid-November, late November. So do keep an eye out for that. If that's of interest, it is a really great opportunity to do a lot of learning. We moved on from there to include in-season workshops, so full-day in-person events when those are possible, webinars like this, and other fora and opportunities to actually share out with folks experiences on farms and to actually hear from producers, especially on their farms when we can. More recently, we've transitioned into 2 new areas of work that we think are really impactful, and we try to tie these all together as best we can. On-farm research is a program that we maintain and have started in the last several years, where we have several key studies that are meant to, from the grassroots level, assess these topics here as relates to sustainable production and production methods in general. So our sort of flagship within on-farm research is the Soil Health Benchmark Study. This is a study that includes almost 100 farms in a whole variety of different production systems, looking at farm management practices and soil health outcomes on those farms. It's a really impactful and powerful study. If you are a producer and are interested in such things, please do reach out. We're always looking to recruit and include folks when we can. And if you are somebody who might benefit from using that information or would like to glean some of the insights, we can also reach out to any of us, myself or Aaron or Gina, and we can connect you with our research folks. The Diversified Vegetable Financial Benchmark Study is meant to look at the metrics and the practices, again, that lead to financial success within diversified vegetable farms. And that again is looking at sort of the holistic farm financials on diversified vegetable farms. And then the pastured livestock land and feed efficiency study looks at the ways in which pasturing livestock is and can be an efficient system for producing meat as compared with conventional confinement systems, and then benchmarking those systems against each other. And then the topic for tonight's presentation, our two apprenticeship programs, and that falls under our farmer training and development wing or program. We started with the Dairy Grazing Apprenticeship several years ago that Aaron is going to be talking about, and then we developed in-house for ourselves the Diversified Vegetable Apprenticeship program. So it looks like our poll has gone up. Before we go any further, if folks wouldn't mind responding to that, just to let us know where you're coming from as far as what brings you to us tonight, may help us tailor things a little bit. And we'll leave that go for just a minute here. Looks like we've got pretty high success, pretty high participation already, which is great. All right. Yep, so it looks like we've got about half of you are here for the DVA, one person for the dairy grazing, and then almost half of you for both of those. Yeah, we'll be happy to do that. And then Gina, do you want to switch to the next one? We have one additional question here. And we're curious just to know what your role and which of these best describes you as you're coming to us tonight. Okay, great. Yeah, so we've got a mix of mostly prospective apprentices and then some potential grower grazers and some service professionals and some others. Great. All right, very good. Thank you. The last thing I wanted to say before we moved on from this first slide here is that as much as possible, we try to have these programs be reciprocal with each other and to be as well integrated as possible. So the reason I included the folks here, the Goods from the Good Farm in Eastern PA, is because they participate in all of these programs in a variety of ways. They are some of the first participants in our on-farm research program. They hosted our first apprentice, and they are our perennial presenters and are very active within both our conference and our in-season work. John is on our board at this time. We try to use the research agenda to be practical and to drive programming. So as much as possible, when we glean insights from the research studies, we actually try to have those results and those outcomes transition into farmer exchange programming. And similarly, we try to have our apprenticeship programs take place when possible on farms that have research and places that are good exemplars of farmer-to-farmer exchange. So as much as possible, try to have those all work together. Next slide, please. So the fundamental question that we're dealing with here tonight, and kind of we just wanted to set this up for a little bit of grounding, is why apprenticeships at all, or in the first place. In agriculture specifically, farming we know is a difficult occupation to learn, and it's specifically hard to learn in school. Everything can make a lot of sense, conceptually and theoretically when you're sitting in a classroom looking at a book or hearing from a speaker. But to actually be successful in farming and farm management and farm operations, you really have to be out there doing the work. And many of the traditional ways that people got into farming are starting to go away as people are reared further and further away from farms. People don't have family members who have farms anymore. They're not neighbors with farms. And so those ways that you might have a summer job, or you might help with harvest or corn detasseling or something like that, those opportunities are really going away. And so people are less and less able to access those initial opportunities to get into ag. For Pasa specifically, then at sort of the higher level, we're looking at trying to produce skilled workers who are trained in all aspects of the occupation of farming, whether that be grazing, dairy, or diversified vegetable farm management. So we're trying to sort of tie all these together. For those of you in specific roles for the master grower or the master grazer, what they're looking for is motivated labor. They're looking for somebody who actively wants to farm, more than just sort of to make a paycheck, but somebody who wants to make a career or a life of farming. They also are looking for and benefit from an extended work commitment in exchange for training and mentorship. It's one thing to tell you how to do something and go out there and accomplish a task. It's another thing to invest in explaining the why and talking about how the farm came to the production system that they have. Every farm is unique. It's sort of a thumbprint and a moment in time for a particular person. It's a representation of their personality, and getting into that and understanding the whys and wherefores is a time commitment. So the farmers are exchanging, an extended period of time with the apprentice for some of that explanation and some of that greater depth and detail. There's also the possibility of expansion or transition. Farmers who are getting to the end of their farming careers and are looking to transition out of farming. They may be it may be sort of an interview or an extended interview process where you're actually looking at taking over the farm in some way or other. Also, if the farm is looking to expand and looking to have the apprentice transition into becoming, an enterprise manager or somebody who's managing some aspect of the farm in the future, it can be used in either of those ways. Many of our farmer members were looking to give back to the farming community. They had received investment and mentorship from other farmers in the past, and they wanted to pay that forward, and they wanted to be involved in a similar kind of exchange and investing in sustainable agriculture for the future. And then similar to the transition and expansion, they can also use the apprenticeship as a way to start looking at farm succession. So actually transitioning the farm across generations. That might be to a child or an extended family member, a niece or nephew, something like that, or to somebody who's outside of the family, but maybe from the community or otherwise. For the apprentices then, on the other hand, they're looking to reduce their risk when getting into farming. It's a very risky enterprise. There's lots of moving parts. You're only in control of a very small portion of everything that's going around your farm environment and outside of it. And you want to have the lowest risk profile possible. You want to be pretty sure about that you can manage and that you're not learning on the job, that you know what you're doing when you start your professional farming life after apprenticing. Gives you time and gives you structure to build professional networks, connecting with other farmers who might be future mentors or peers or collaborators. Also technical service providers, connecting with lenders, connecting with, nutrient management professionals, things like that, contractors. So it's an extended period to make those connections and set up those networks. And then creating opportunities for after the apprenticeship. So your Journey Worker certification is a credential that you can take with you, and you can use as an opportunity to actually highlight the skills that you've built and the value that you bring either to another farm that you might go to work for professionally, or, for example, if you were going to seek capital, it would be a testament to that. Creating opportunities also, like you said, if you are entering into a farm transition opportunity with the farm that you apprentice with or another farm that you encounter, it can be an opportunity to help facilitate those transitions more smoothly. And then accessing lines of credit. By being a lower risk profile, lenders are more likely to extend loans or credit to you. It's easier and cheaper to borrow to actually set up your farm enterprise. Next slide. And then the one other thing we wanted to say, just by way of grounding, is that we sort of see, we like to use this as a sort of a watershed metaphor, that our programs are only part of an extended pipeline of farmer training opportunities. Apprenticeships are not the end all be all, and they are not the only way to get into farming. But we see, and we are not the totality of how you might get there. So we recognize that there are a lot of upstream sources where you might come from if you were coming into the apprenticeship. You might be apprenticing with a family member. You might be a current employee. Several of our apprentices in the DVA have been current employees who then transitioned into an apprentice role. You might be a prospective future owner for a farm where the farmer wants to really give you an extended vetting and training before you take over the farm. Or you might be coming to us from a training program or other type of training experience that's out there. You know, a lot of folks are trying their hand at farming and urban farming, and then you want to scale up or you want to invest in your skills so that you can go return to those settings and be more successful and more productive. You might be coming from an educational or a nonprofit farm. If you're coming from an internship or an apprenticeship elsewhere, it's a great way to get into it. Many of the local and regional colleges and universities have growing situations, whether they're market gardens or actual production farms. And then farm incubators. You know, a lot of folks find at the end of a period on a farm incubator, they really want to invest in the time and the skills to farm more intensively and manage at a higher level. So it might actually be a follow-on from an incubator experience. Similarly, following the watershed metaphor, downstream of us is where you might go after an apprenticeship. And we see a lot of roles for people becoming professional managers for other folks, actually. So not taking on the full risk of being an owner operator immediately after your apprenticeship, but actually farming professionally for someone else. And that can be in a for-profit setting or a nonprofit setting. Owner operators, you might transition right to farm ownership, and that might be through outright purchase or transition or some sort of other arrangement. And then farm incubators, again, are listed here because we also see that folks transitioning out of apprenticeships can then move to a farm incubator program and actually use them to their highest function. So actually getting your business set up and actually incubating it the way that those entities were intended. Next slide. Now I'm going to hand it over to Aaron DeLong. He's going to speak about the Dairy Grazing Apprenticeship, which he helps to administer.
So thanks, Dan. It's a good foundation for the conversation. As Dan said, I lead Dairy Grazing Apprenticeship in the state. I live in Chester County, Southeast Pennsylvania. I'm also a Delaware Valley hub manager. So I tend to be the point person for Pasa programming in the eastern part of Pennsylvania. But for Dairy Grazing Apprenticeship, I travel all over the state. I've been working with the program since I started working with Pasa in 2016. I also want to introduce on our webinar tonight one of our apprentices who's actually partnered with Pasa for a couple years in helping apprentice applicants find farms and just helping with some of the work of running the apprenticeship in the state. That's Jessica Matthews. Jessica, do you want to say hi? You can unmute yourself.
That works better. Hello.
Jessica, where are you at right now?
I'm at Seven Stars Farm in Chester County in Phoenixville.
And you've been in the apprenticeship for a couple years, yeah?
Yeah, since the end of 2017 is when I signed on formally.
And you expect to finish up when?
I should be done in March. I'm taking my final class now, and then I just have to accrue my final on-the-job training hours.
Thank you so much for joining tonight, Jess.
Sure.
And in the question and answer, there might be some that I ask you to answer coming from the place of being an apprentice.
Sure, yeah.
So Dairy Grazing Apprenticeship, it actually began in Wisconsin. It was the first federally accredited apprenticeship in agriculture in the country. We talked a little bit about why apprenticeship earlier as a training model. Obviously, it's been in a lot of the skilled trades long before DGA began in 2010. But adopting it specifically for agriculture is a relatively recent development, and also speaks to the fact that we're still figuring out how to adopt it best. But the basic notion is to help train people, give them the skills to succeed as a farmer. So it began in Wisconsin in 2010. spread to 11 states at this point. The apprenticeship consists of 3,700 hours on the job training. So that's basically working on the farm. It's all paid. Formal apprenticeship has to be paid. And then 200 or more like 300 hours related technical instruction, 200 hours of coursework. So in dairy grazing apprenticeship and the vegetable apprenticeship Dan will describe, which Pasa developed, that has a little bit of difference with related technical instruction. With dairy grazing apprenticeship, we have a series of online classes, and then there are 100 hours of basically elective coursework, which can be going to other farms for pasture walks or farmer-to-farmer exchange events, going to conferences like the Pasa Winter Conference. All of our apprentices get scholarships to that conference each year, or going to industry meetings. A lot of our apprenticeships go along with their mentors, with the master grazer, to like if Organic Valley has a meeting for all their producers in Southeast PA, our apprentices with OV will typically go to that meeting with the mentor farmer. How does DGA work? Well, what you're looking at here is a screenshot of a apprentice application. So apprentices apply online, and masters also apply online, master grazers. For master grazers, I go out, or someone else, another education coordinator will go out. We have a couple of them around the state that Pasa has worked with over the years. And we'll basically do a farm assessment, and we'll determine, is this farm a safe place to work? And is this farmer a suitable mentor for somebody who wants to learn grass-based, manage-intensive rotational grazing? We submit that farm assessment to a National Apprenticeship Training Committee, which is a group of farmers around the country who work with DGA, all dairy grazers. We have a conversation with them, and they ask the person who did the assessment, usually me, questions about the farm. They look at the farmer's application, which is basically just, this is who I am and this is why I want to do this. And then they either approve or do not approve the farm. We have had a couple farms that applied that the National Committee decided weren't quite up to the standards. Apprentices don't get vetted that way. Anybody who wants to apply for dairy grazing apprenticeship can apply, and they just have to do, you kind of see Natalie's profile here, her application. They just have to do some version of this. Some people are more thorough than others. And then it's kind of up to the master grazer and the apprentice to find each other. In Pennsylvania, Jessica and I specifically, we'll look at applications, and we know what in our master grazer pool are looking and what those different farms represent. And we might say, hey, Natalie, you're looking for an organic producer who's shipping to a conventional market. Well, we have a guy in Perry County who fits that description. Or there's a guy near you or a woman near you who fits kind of what you're looking for. You should reach out to them. And we also do that with the masters. But it's really important in this system that the master and apprentice have motivation motivation to engage in the process, and also to meet and connect personally. Because what we find is, so not all, few master grazers are going to be suitable for every applicant, but most of them will have a certain kind of person they work well with. And that's really important for an apprenticeship to succeed, for that mentor and that apprentice to mesh through personal connection. A big way we recommend figuring that out is by doing trial work visits once you've kind of had good communication with each other. What is the role of the education coordinator? I'm the lead education coordinator in the state. Jessica has done some of that work. We have a couple other dairy farmers in the middle of the state and the western part of the state who do some of that work. We visit each master and apprentice pair typically about once a month, and we go through a series of skills that the apprentice is expected to learn over the course of 2 years. There's a formal book, a training skills guidebook, that guides that process. And it's everything from how to manage cattle safely, how to manage the milking operations properly, from sanitation in the parlor to identifying any issues with the cows, any health issues, to how to manage pasture properly, which is, understanding basics of soil science, and also understanding how to measure how much dry matter is in a pasture, and knowing how much dry matter the herd might need, and being able to set an appropriate paddock for the cattle to come into and graze between milkings. So that's all part of what the apprentice is expected to gain some understanding of over the course of a couple years. At the end of 2 years, the apprentice is not done, but they have a foundation where it's expected they could step into a management role. So Dairy Grazing Apprenticeship in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, we do have one farm in New Jersey. We had two, but the master grazer there moved on. He moved to a different state. So now we have one in New Jersey. And currently we have about 15 active in Pennsylvania. We've approved 18 over the course of the last few years. We've been working with the program since 2016. We have 6 apprentices active in the state right now. One of those is in New Jersey at the one farm there. And we have one apprentice who is pending the approval of a master grazer right in the middle of the state. We have 3 master grazers in our network who are actually looking for apprentices right now. And they go from everything from the organic commodity market, I was thinking of him earlier when I gave the example, to organic direct market, a farm that's certified organic, but all their product goes direct to consumer and doesn't go through Organic Valley or any of the processor handlers that a commodity market would. We've graduated 1 apprentice, and we're expecting the second one to graduate this fall, and then Jessica next spring. And we also run a short internship program with Dairy Grazing Apprenticeship, partnered with Center for Dairy Excellence for a few years on that. And then we ran 1 internship independently of that. All 4 of those internships have completed, and all of those interns have actually gone on to apprenticeship, except the most recent one this past summer. She did not. So successes with the program, DGA has been a big learning curve for Pasa, and it's also been a hard time in the dairy market, but we've learned a lot, and we have had some successes. One thing we've done pretty well is building networks for masters and apprentices. Dan referenced building networks as part of the benefits to an apprentice. And it's really something we try to do. We want them to get to know the other apprentices and their peers. We also want them to get to know other farms. How one farm does anything is going to be different than any other farm. So it's really useful to get in-depth training at one operation with one experienced master of their craft. But it's really helpful also to go and see other farms and to understand how other people approach what is essentially the same challenge. In this case, making good, healthy food using cows on grass. Now, some of our farms feed grain. It's a big part of most dairy operations, and some of our farms are 100% grass. But they're always, at least at the minimum, abiding by organic standards, true organic standards, in terms of the cows are out on pasture during the grazing season, and at least 1/3 of their diet is coming directly from pasture. Our network, Center for Dairy Excellence, I referenced, we've worked with the center with internships, but we've also been able to work through the center for a lot of financial consulting work for our apprentices. The center is the largest nonprofit for dairy in the state. It's funded by the Department of Agriculture in the state. It's largely conventional, but they've been a good partner in helping our grazing operations get access to consultants to understand how to optimize their business. They've also helped some of our apprentices get access to consultants to look at potential enterprises that they might run and whether they're feasible. Helping our apprentices, especially the ones that are progressing and approaching graduation, find their future within the industry is a priority. And it's something that we really care about, because, to be honest, apprenticeship programs for Pasa are not about creating more journey person or certificate holders. They're about creating new farmers. The idea of becoming a journey person is powerful because then that accreditation is recognized by people around the country and you can use it to get jobs. But really what we want is we want to build a strong local food system, and the cornerstone of a strong local food system are good farmers. And we believe these programs are going to make some of the best farmers. Pennsylvania Grazing Lands Coalition, very important partner that helps our apprentices and our master grazers network with each other across the state, particularly through educational events, extension, and the USDA Ag Research Service. We've done research projects with our apprentices using, for example, computer modeling programs to understand how their farm might change if they increased herd size or if they fed more grass, how that would affect production, what that would look like for greenhouse gas emissions. So again, this is part of what Dan's talking about, where Pasa is really trying to make these programs holistic, where we're tying in research with practical training, with farmer-to-farmer exchange, to really try to give our apprentices as many tools as we can to succeed. Again, the DGA network in Pennsylvania, in-person and virtual connections. And one of the things about DGA, which is nice, is we do have a national network. So once a month, DGA will have a roundtable call on everything from once a day milking to dealing with heat, stress in cows. And everybody across the DGA network is invited to take part. And then you can actually start to meet people who are doing this in Minnesota, who are doing this in Ohio, and kind of learn what the different regions, how they approach similar issues, and also, learn what Minnesotans sound like. Creating diverse opportunities. We have host farms across the state. We're lacking a little bit in the far west, but we've got them north, south, east, central, and over to Blair County is about as far as we get in the west. I'm leaning on Dan. I keep saying, Dan, you got to find us a farm out there, but he's so busy with his vegetables. Diverse markets within master communities. So again, diverse opportunities. We have direct market farms, we have organic farms, and we have farms that ship to the conventional market who make it work because they know how to optimize their income over feed cost with a grazing operation. I think one of the things that's a success with this program is we've really worked with our apprentices and our masters to make this program serve their needs. And I talked a little about this with our apprentices, especially as they progress, once they get their feet under them and we get a clear view of what their personal farming vision is. What can we bring that apprentice specifically to help them be prepared for their future career? And how can we support them beyond the apprenticeship to make sure that they continue to thrive and continue to contribute to our food system? Challenges, so I should say on this last slide, that's Matt Baumgartner down there. Matt is one of our education coordinators. He's in Lebanon County. And here's Joe Babiesh, who is one of our first apprentices. He was over at Bobolink Dairy in New Jersey, which is a farm that makes cheese with their milk, and that's the only thing they do with it. 100% farmstead cheese. Challenges. I think one of the challenges we've seen is apprentices with no experience do face a steep learning curve. This is part of why we've leaned towards internships. We really, say, please do a work trial period where both of you are just trying each other out for at least a few days. Part-time hours. Jessica's an example of somebody who came in with no experience. We do have, I think about half of our dairy apprentices come in with no experience, and a lot of them succeed. A lot of them don't, but that's kind of par for the course. Nationally, the attrition rate among formal apprenticeships is about 50%. It's actually a higher success rate than we see for four-year colleges. Dairy grazing apprenticeship is a little bit lower in Pennsylvania. I think part of it because we've been figuring it out. Also, the dairy market's been very challenged the last few years. Our success rate is starting to climb, I think, as our apprentice cohort sort of, to be honest, just becomes, we get better at the apprenticeship, our masters are getting better at being teachers, and our apprentice cohort is also getting better in some ways. But internships, part-time hours, they're softer entries for people new to dairy. And then they can really get to see, how do they feel working around cows? Can they deal with all that manure, which is real? Um, I think you fall in love. Some people fall in love with it. And other people say, you know what, this isn't for me. And that's one of the things that is actually, also kind of a success with apprenticeship. Even when people don't complete it, it gives you an opportunity to try, especially with dairy, a method of farming that has high barriers to entry. It's very expensive to become a dairy farmer if you're coming out of nowhere with it. And you can try it and you can see, is this a good fit for me? And you do it at very low risk. Um, I think another challenge, the master grazers, again, I was saying they're getting to be better teachers, but a lot of talented farmers are not naturally teachers. And so that's part of our role as education coordinators and Pasa as an education organization, is to help them learn how to do the best job they can, transferring their knowledge to the next generation. Typically, we do have a few older apprentices, but um, you know, usually they're in their 20s, sometimes 30s. Our oldest apprentice in DJ nationally is in his 50s, and he's doing great. So there you go. And apprentices come from many different walks of life, and there can be communication issues even in family situations. So again, that's part of what we do as the facilitators, facilitating organization, ed coordinators, education coordinators, is try to help to make sure people are communicating, and that if there are issues with the work situation, they're being addressed and talked about. Housing is probably one of the biggest challenges we face. Few farms can offer housing. Often matches are most easily realized through candidates who are already nearby. Doesn't mean that people don't move, but a lot of our farms don't have housing. And a lot of times when you're nearby, you kind of, the lay of the land, you have your networks, you kind of know where you're living, you're comfortable there. And that can be really helpful, especially if you're entering farming from a place of little experience. And then I mentioned the challenges of the dairy market. So that's a basic overview of DGA. I think that's my last slide, and I'll put it back to Dan. I'll just encourage folks to chat any questions you have once again, and again, we'll get to it after Dan's finished his talk about DBA.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. Let's see, we'll take over from your screen share there. All right, very good. Is that coming through? All right. So yeah, I'm going to talk about the Diversified Vegetable Apprenticeship Program. This is a program that Pasa started on the model of dairy grazing. We tried to learn as many lessons from them as possible. So there are going to be significant similarities, and there are obviously some differences because it's vegetables and not livestock. This photo here, I like to include this is the group of farmers, farm educators, and technical service providers who contributed to our curriculum and are the basis for this program. There are 2 folks missing from here, but these represent 19 farms and institutions from around the state who contributed to this. We also had an additional 35 outside farmers separate from these folks who actually verified and gave additional feedback. So we have almost 50 people who contributed to our curriculum, professional farmers. What they came up with after sort of a extended process of winnowing and discussion was about 15 different duty areas that were key to diversified vegetable farm management. I have them listed here. We're not going to cover these by any means, but these were the things that these and associated tasks were associated with, for them, success in diversified vegetable farm management. And so this is what we really try to teach to, this is what we try to support folks for, and this is what we provide additional training opportunities to address. a little bit of an overview here, just the program at a glance. It was designed to be 2 seasons generally. That was what, in conversation with our farmers, they said was most likely to be both successful for the apprentice and advantageous for them as folks who are hosting them. That can be because for the state's purposes, that actually they measure things in hours, not seasons. So the total number of work hours is 3,000. And that can be split up across 18 months. So you could run, we call it a straight run, where you go just for a year and a half on a farm and accumulate hours, or we have two seasons that are roughly 9 to 10 months each with a gap for the winter time in between. So we have some flexibility there. Of that 3,000 hours, about 90% of it, 2,784 hours, is the on-the-job training. That's the working with the farmer on the farm, hands-on, day in and day out. About 10% of that is what's called related technical instruction, similar to the dairy grazing courses. These are structured opportunities for learning either on or off the farm, but more getting into the nuts and bolts beyond the nuts and bolts. This is sort of the why and a lot of the planning. So you see below that, there you have the qualifying RTI. This includes, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, but there's a wide range of things that we count as RTI toward that 216 hours. And then there are pay raises that are structured in, we like to say they're again, tied to the hours, but it's approximately every 6 months, provided that the apprentice is making adequate progress on their educational goals and making good progress in their on-the-job work with the farmer. I included here a page. This is the first page of the skills list from the job book. And this is what that whole process of curriculum building came to. So we have a job book that's sort of the controlling document for the apprenticeship. About half of it is policies and procedures. And the second half, about 20 pages of it, is this extensive skills list. And as an apprentice, what you're looking to get to is you're trying to move your skills from either no exposure or some light exposure to functional or advanced competency by the end of your experience. So you're moving along this continuum from left to right. So you can see it here, and I'll move forward one more, and we'll look a little bit more closely just for an example. We have the skills broken out here as pre-season, in-season, and post-season, just to give you a sense for generally when you would be covering those topics on the farm. And then we provide a monthly educational check-in between the farmer and the apprentice to make sure that you're actually able to address these topics throughout your experience. And I will say that a lot of the farmers use this to help keep things on track, you know, in the hecticness of, especially of like July and August on a vegetable farm. It can be, you can lose a little bit of sight of the training goals for an apprentice. And sometimes it is important as an apprentice just to sort of really buckle down and focus on getting the work done. But it's also important to, you know, keep an eye on learning lessons and not just gritting it out, but also trying to learn as much as you can. And these skills lists can be really helpful for that. Within the related instruction, there are several things, and they're listed here, that are required. That includes an OSHA safety training, that includes tractor safety training, at least 1 year of a farm business and financials training that we have partnered with to deliver. A food safety training, integrated pest management, and at least 1 year at Pasa Sustainable Agriculture Conference. Which can actually, when you're a part of the conference, you can attend a variety of different topics, and many of these, the topics above are addressed. You can actually accomplish 2 of these goals at the same time. Some of these are elective. The second year of that farm financials training is optional, although highly recommended. And if you do complete that second year, you actually qualify for a discounted rates on your ag loans with the Farm Credit Network. And it also qualifies for the financial literacy component that the USDA requires if you're going to borrow from the USDA. So by completing that ag biz training, you actually open up 2 lines of potential credit and capital for yourself. We obviously recommend people come to as many conferences as they can. And we also suggest small engine repair and the pesticide applicator training if that's something that's of interest to you. We strive as much as possible to make these trainings free or as inexpensive as possible. Any and all trainings that are through Pasa, so that includes the conference, webinars like this, workshops, and anything else that we're putting on, are all free. It's complimentary registration for the apprentice for as long as they're in the program. So you can use that to your maximum advantage and really see a lot of programming and really learn a lot in these RTI opportunities. There was a recent change. The AgBiz Masters training used to have a fee associated with it that was about $200. As of this season, as long as you complete the course, you receive a scholarship, and that becomes a no-cost program. So at this point, the only thing that has a cost associated with it is that OSHA 10 training at the top, and that's about a $25 training. So pretty significant that you're making wages as an apprentice, and your only cost is for one outside training. Just to talk about those partnerships, AgViz Masters is a partnership with the Farm Credit folks to provide that farm financials training. We're also connected with the Vegetable Growers Association in Pennsylvania to provide a complimentary attendance to their Mid-Atlantic Fruit and Vegetable Growers Conference, which is a peer conference to ours. That's a really significant training opportunity. So we encourage folks to take advantage of that if they can. We also have worked within PASA to expand our conference programming and our in-season events to help better speak to those RTI opportunities. So we offer a food safety training. We offered a pretty extensive integrated pest management this summer, and food safety, tractor safety, and all of those sort of things. We try to offer on a regular basis so that apprentices are able to access them and learn them on a regular basis. We are not the end-all be-all for farm education by any means. So we also try to certify and pre-qualify events from other peer organizations, so Penn State Extension or other extension services in the contiguous states. The Vegetable Growers Conference, obviously, and any workshops that they put on in the season. And we try to work with other farming organizations who have training opportunities as well to make sure that those opportunities also qualify for apprentices training time. And then we also try to offer train the trainer programming for the host farmers. We have offered programming on employee handbooks, as well as some best management practices for on-farm labor, as well as on-farm training. So it's not just a learning proposition for the apprentice, it's also an opportunity for the farmer to learn about how to better manage people and how to be a better trainer. This is a map showing you the distribution of the available farms. I pulled this today, so it is fairly up to date, although there are a few of these that are in flux. But each of the check marks are a matched apprentice and farmer pair, and each of the starred farms is an available approved farm right now, for the most part. We are able to recruit in other folks to the program who aren't already on this map. So if there is a farm in your area or a farm that you're aware of that you'd like to work with who isn't in our program already, we are able to work with you and work with them to recruit them into the program, get them applied and approved within the program as long as they meet our criteria to be a host farmer. And I would say that's one of the ways that we've had a lot of farms come to us, is that apprentices find that there's somebody that they want to work with. They reach out, connect us with that farmer, and we actually work on bringing them into the program. So successes, as of right now, inquiry is the first stage for an apprentice to reach out to us. We have a basic web form on our website, and we'll talk about that more in just a minute. But that's the way that apprentices reach out and indicate their interest to us. To date, we have over 300 folks who have reached out over the last 2.5 years or so with interest in the program, which I think is pretty good. As of right now, we have 27 active and approved farms. 9 of those are matched with apprentices currently. So there's still a lot of capacity, as you can see from the map, of folks who have yet to be matched. rather than try to force a match and suggest that an apprentice and a farmer work together, we really rely on the farmer and the apprentice to match with each other, because we don't want to be putting you in a position that you connect with somebody that doesn't work for you. So like Aaron said, not every farmer is appropriate for every apprentice, but there are definitely lots of different personalities out there that you can connect with, and there is a right farm for everyone to work with. We have had a really great time and been, I think, pretty successful offering those training opportunities as well as the partnerships to do it. So our tractor safety trainings have been offered all around the state with a variety of host farms. Our food safety trainings have similarly been offered a variety of times around the state. Our IPM series have been very good, and the Ag Biz Masters training is very robust. And then working with PVGA has been very fruitful for us. And then the farmers can be fantastic, creative, excellent trainers for apprentices. Some of the best ideas we've had as far as how to best train and best convey the information around farming to the apprentices have been generated by the farmers themselves. They have an idea, they know what works for them, or they saw something on another farm that they want to try for themselves, and they're training with their apprentice. So an active, engaged host farmer who's willing to be creative and willing to work with you can be really productive. Here in the photo, we've got one of our farmers and apprentices. They're up in Northeast PA, Logan and Liz. And Logan is coming to the end of his training experience and is just featured in an article in Lancaster Farming. So that was exciting for us. Challenges. The experience that apprentice candidates bring, in the same way that Aaron was saying, the only thing that we've rejected an apprentice inquiry for so far is a lack of experience. We do require that apprentices have at least 1 year of production farming experience or its equivalent. There is a lot of wiggle room built into that, so don't let that stop you from reaching out. And we are also working to develop opportunities for people to gain that first year of experience, whether that be connecting you directly with a farm in your area, suggesting a course of some self-study opportunities, and possibly we're working right now on developing a pre-apprenticeship program as well that's meant to help get you some of those baseline skills to qualify you into the program. We are looking to recruit larger scale producers as host farms for the program. Right now, we sort of are in that 50 acres or less, but most of our approved farms are, I would say, under 20 acres or so, which is only part of the diversified vegetable production landscape. So we'd like to include more larger scale folks so we can help to speak to larger production as well. As Aaron alluded to, housing is always a challenge. There are better opportunities and worse opportunities in on-farm housing. And so we try to work with farms as best as possible to offer, if they are going to offer housing, to do it in the most helpful way possible. COVID-19 has been kind of a mixed bag for vegetable farmers. Some, especially in the CSA space, have had a pretty good season, all things considered. And then others, including some of ours who had hoped to work with apprentices, have been challenged by just financial constraints or safety constraints as far as interacting with the public or things like that. So it has been disruptive a little bit for us. And then the biggest one that factors in, and I think Aaron spoke to this as well, is managing interpersonal relationships, especially within the employment space, can be difficult. Not all farmers are meant to be trainers, and not all farmers and apprentices are meant to work together. And so we have tried to put some policies and procedures together, as well as some best practices and recommendations for how folks can best assess whether or not it's a good match for them, and then if it's not a good match, to try and offboard you in a way that it keeps your options open and moves you on to something better. I will say, just in case you're curious, the application process for an apprentice within DVA, I'll just go back here, I guess, for a minute while we have a pretty picture. For apprentices, it's a two-stage process. On our website, there's an inquiry form that just looks at your basic experience and whether you meet our basic criteria to be an apprentice. If you do, you'll be approved and you'll be sent a link to the full application. If you aren't, we'll offer to work with you on connecting you with excuse me, with the training opportunity or trying to connect with a farm to get that initial experience. The full application, once it's approved, we'll review it internally, and once it's approved, that will become your apprentice profile. We have a web portal that we use for matching. Farmers and apprentices can log on, and the profiles are there. It includes things like your professional goals, your past experience, any geographic limitations or opportunities that you want to explore, things like that. And then you can use that as a way to match with each other. If you are an apprentice or a farmer within the system, I do recommend checking in periodically with your profile. You can get messages that way from farms who are interested, but it's also worthwhile to keep an eye on your profile and see if it's actually something that is productive and if that farmers are responding to. Sometimes people put too much personal detail in, and it might be worth toning that down. Sometimes it's worth, highlighting your professional experience in a more or a different light. And the single thing within a apprentice profile and a farm profile that I've seen for success with matching is just a profile picture. There's a little stock icon, but if you don't put anything up, it's hard to get a sense for any personality or really anything about anybody. It doesn't have to be a picture of you even. A few of them have just sort of pictures of pretty scenery, but that helps to connect, the image with your profile and helps you stick in people's minds. For a farmer, there's a full application. It's a single stage application for farmers, and then a site visit is required, especially if you aren't a part of other Pasa programming. We like to come out and just see the farm and verify that what you included in your application is actually the case on your farm before we actually have an apprentice start with you. And after that stage, those profiles are approved, and then you're active in the system. Just a couple things that I want to reiterate. You'll get either as a farmer, a host farmer, or as an apprentice, you'll get exactly as much as you put in. It is possible to be a little too passive within the system and just kind of work day in and day out and get your credits, and that's fine. And you probably learn quite a bit. But it's really worthwhile being proactive and pursuing your own goals. And even if those change, we're happy to work with you and address new needs that you might have. But it is worth keeping that in mind. It's an investment in yourself professionally. Strongly recommend a working interview for anyone who's matching with a farm, kind of to what Aaron was suggesting. Scheduling a day or two to actually go to the farm, be on the farm and work under the farmer, and just get a sense for the farm, more so than just reading the profile or looking them up online, or even just visiting, kind of driving by and doing a walking visit or something. Actually getting out there and working with them and seeing what it's like for a day or two, and actually sweating a little bit in the field can be really helpful to get a sense for whether it's a good match for you. And then finally, once you're on the farm, and even beforehand, communication is key. If you have specific needs, specific goals, or limitations, don't hold back, because those are the kind of things that can undermine you once you're on the job. And that's too bad. We really like to have every apprentice be successful, and we think that communication is the best way to get there. So with that, I'll just, I think Aaron's going to help to moderate any questions that have come in. If you have additional questions now that you've seen both of the presentations, please feel free to put them in the chat box. And I've included here our emails if you want to reach out to either of us directly with follow-up questions, or if you want to look more in depth at the program specifics, those are included at the link here, or you can just go to pasafarming.org and there's a tab for apprenticeships. Aaron, do you want to take over the questions?
Yeah, I wonder if it'd be all right. We weren't able to have a vegetable apprentice on. We do have Jess with dairy apprenticeship. And if it'd be all right if she Jess, what are we missing here from your perspective and your experience as an apprentice in one of these programs?
No, I thought it was great. I think you really addressed the flexibility of the program. And really, to me, like, as an apprentice and a master grazer, I'm not sure what they're called in veggie. What terminology do you guys use, Dan?
Master grower and
Farmer?
apprentice.
Okay, master grower. That relationship, it's very intimate and it's different for everybody. So that to me is really the biggest piece of finding a good match. And a good match is where all of this really good stuff comes from, where you can exchange ideas, and it's more than just farming's hard work. Like, it's really hard. So it's more than just the hard daily labor of running a farm. It's coming up with plans together and really getting a feel for what your future can look like in farming. So that to me is I can't stress enough, like, you gotta show up to the farm and work there. And like Dan said, sweat in the field. Like, that's the most important part to me with matching with someone.
Thanks, Jessica. And folks, feel free to include Jess with questions. So without further ado, Dan, we'll jump in here, and I'm sure you have the chat box too, but the first one was from Dave. Hi, Dave. It's nice to see your name there. I hope it's going all right at Glenwood. Aaron, you mentioned a 50% attrition rate nationally. Is that specific to dairy apprenticeships, or does figure in all types of farm apprenticeships? That's actually a figure for formal registered apprenticeship generally. The vast majority of formal registered apprenticeship, of course, is more in the skilled trades like welding, carpentry, and such. That figure is something that Dairy Grazing Apprenticeship National has sourced. They're kind of my citation on that. The Dairy Grazing Apprenticeship nationally is about 48%, so right about there. And of course, our vegetable apprenticeship is the first state. I think it was the first state registered one in the nation. Dan, is that correct? And it's very new.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit early for us to be putting those stats together. Will the slides be sent out after the webinar? Jamie asks. Well, we will post a recording of this. Dan, what do you think about that? Will the slides be sent out after the webinar?
If you reach out to us directly, we can share them. We generally don't share them broadly, just because it can be a bit of a hassle technically. But yeah, if you send us an email, or if there's something in particular you want to see, we can send a PDF. Yeah. Yeah,
I think reaching out individually would be good.
Mm-hmm.
Derek, he makes a comment that the map on the Pasa website for vegetables is not showing some farms, specifically the farm north of Princeton.
Derek, if you want to mention it to me directly, like, or either publicly or privately in the chat box, and I can check on that. Yeah. Yep.
From Dave again, what can you tell me about the process for getting a program accredited? What entity approved the Diversified Veggie Job Book? So one thing I'll say here is getting a program accredited, the job book is core to that. That's how you kind of prove to the Department of Labor that this is a profession and that there are a set of skills that are unique to this profession. Both the vegetable apprenticeship and the grazing apprenticeship have one. Dan took that. Pasa took on the curriculum that Wisconsin had developed, brought it to Pennsylvania. Dan was the lead building it from scratch here in Pennsylvania. So Dan, would you like to address that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Within Pennsylvania, the Department of Labor and Industries workforce or apprenticeship workforce board are the approving authority. So we worked with a liaison through CareerLink from the Department of Labor and Industry, DLI, to prepare all of our documents and make sure that we were addressing all of their concerns. And then we actually presented the entire program, the parameters, the materials, including the job book, in front of the apprenticeship board at DLI. That board is made up primarily of workforce professionals, other folks from other industry segments, as well as some representatives from state government and other folks who come out of traditional apprenticeship training. I will say that, you know, they were pretty impressed using dairy grazing as our model. We obviously ticked a lot of the boxes early on with what they were interested in. One of their main concerns for all industries is safety. And so they actually encouraged us and influenced us to include some additional safety considerations and some safety trainings, because farming, like all of the other, you know, any industry really, is a potentially hazardous occupation. You're working with animals, you're working with big equipment, you're just out there in the environment a lot. And so we tried to integrate that as much as possible to be cognizant of that. But yeah, that's a long way to answer the question. It was like the Department of Labor and Industries Apprenticeship Board.
Yeah, so that was at the state level, and you start at the state level, and then Dairy Grazing Apprenticeship then went to the Federal Department of Labor and got approved on that level, and that allowed them to sign memorandum of understanding, or memoranda of understanding, with various states, Pennsylvania being one, New York being another, Ohio. I see one of our partners in Ohio was on this. I don't know if she's still here. And so the federal allowed the apprenticeship that DGA developed to really spread. We actually, with DGA in Pennsylvania, we actually worked to get it accredited at the state level last year, moving through sort of a trail that Dan had blazed, because that allowed us to find funding that wouldn't be available for the apprenticeship program otherwise. A big priority for us is getting funding for apprentices so that their classes are free. The online coursework for DGA is a little more expensive than the coursework for DVA. And we also like to try to find money for our mentor farms, if possible, to subsidize the wages for the apprentices and to recognize that they are not just working an employee, they are teaching someone. And they're teaching someone who in a lot of cases might leave after they've invested a lot of time and work with them. And so far we've been fortunate to be able to find that kind of stuff, but it comes and goes a little bit, as anyone in nonprofits knows. Hope that answered that, Dave. I think we give you a lot more than you bargained for. From Mandy, are there currently farms in the Diversified Vegetable Apprenticeship that are practicing permaculture principles / regenerative practices with integrated animal grazing?
It's a great question. There are several that have used permaculture and agroecological principles in their farm design, and many of them who are using or striving toward regenerative practices generally. The integration with animal grazing is a challenge because of food safety regulations. A lot of the vegetable farms that used to have, you know, they would bring the chickens in to graze over the veggie fields at the end of the season, or, you know, might rotate 1 year in, 1 year out, have found that the food safety implications of really ongoing integrated grazing can be a challenge. And so for most of the farms that are in the program and active right now that come to mind, they have livestock on a vegetable farm, but they're often kept quite separate in order to address those food safety concerns. It's one of those ongoing challenges, yeah. There is one that is pretty close, and they're doing pretty fast cycles. But yeah, it's fairly rare at this point.
From Maureen, to direct it to me, you briefly mentioned shorter term internships at DGA. Can you go into more detail? So really, I think for Dan and I both, for Pasa, we've got these apprenticeships running, and there's a focus on developing pre-apprenticeship and post-apprenticeship, serving the people when they're done in the journey worker phase. I talked a little bit about that with Dairy Grazing Apprenticeship, We've had a little more work to do there because we've been doing it longer there. But pre-apprenticeship, internship plays into that. And right now, the way internship's working with Dairy Grazing Apprenticeship, if we're not in the summer where we're partnering with Center for Dairy Excellence, it's pretty informal. And it's, you know, when we've worked it differently for different farms. Usually it's somebody who's working a low amount of hours with an approved master grazer, and they have a training skills guidebook, they have a job book that will help guide and help them understand what they're doing, and maybe they can focus on a particular area that they want to learn. Usually that's related to time of year, what's really going on in the farm at that time of year. If they're calving, then it's calf care. If it's, you know, if we're entering this period right now for a lot of farms, it'd be looking at preparing pasture for winter, and then milking operations is always relevant for most of the farms if they're not seasonal. So it's really looking at a mini track of learning at a lower commitment level for both the farm and the intern. We do have another intern mid-state who's working he's working 5 days a week, but part of the reason he's engaging with that is because he's under 18. One thing we haven't mentioned about these apprenticeships, and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have to be 18 and you have to have at least a GED or a high school diploma. So pre-apprenticeship is a way to engage with younger people, and it's also a way to engage with people who aren't as experienced. Dan talked about that a little with DVA. DGA, you can come in with no experience, but internship's a good way to do it because you get to know the farm, and we can design a shorter education plan is what we call it. And we have someone starting that in a couple weeks. It's actually a college student. They're going to do a practicum with one of our DGA farms. So the answer there, Maureen, is it's pretty informal and pretty personalized at this point. We would like to get something that's a little more formal, but the hope is that they're in internship, and then we can transfer those hours into the apprenticeship if they want to go into full apprenticeship. But there's not the expectation of that from the start. The apprenticeship is a non-binding agreement. The apprentice or the master can step away from it if it's not working without any issue. But, you know, it's still a commitment. And when you make that commitment, the intent is to do it. So the internship allows both the farmer and the intern or would-be apprentice to engage at a lower level and with a lower commitment.
I would add to that, if that's okay. So when I started, I guess I was like a pre-apprentice because I was totally new, and that was really important to me to just be able to get a feel for what that would look like. And also I think for the master grazer that I had started with to get a feel for me, because she hadn't, it was a new experience for both of us to be completely new on a farm and then to train somebody completely new on a farm. So that was a good level of engagement. And I ended up doing that for probably 6 months or something before I decided that I was ready to make like a bigger commitment to sign on formally.
Thanks, Jess. From an iPhone, part-time hours was mentioned in DGA. Is that a possibility in DVA potentially?
It is, yeah. It's flexible. All of that is by mutual agreement between the apprentice and the farm, though. And so a lot of times when you think about the vegetable production season, it goes kind of from 0 to 60 and then back to 0, you know, as you go through the season. Whereas dairying, there's a little bit smoother of a curve. There's obviously a bump in the middle, but, you know, it's a little more consistent. If you have a farm or you can find a farm and connect with them and they're willing to agree to a part-time hours arrangement, we're certainly willing and able to entertain it. We had an apprentice who needed to ramp down hours in a previous season, and we're able to accommodate that. So it is definitely possible, but that's where that communication kicks in. Really important to be as specific and clear as possible about what you're trying to do for an arrangement like that. So from our end, possible. It's going to depend a bit on the farm that you're hoping to work with.
Yeah, I will say, you know, with some of our dairy farms, the labor needs are different than a vegetable operation. The relationship with the mentor is often different. I think sometimes it's a little closer. Um, and sometimes you're the only, like if you're on a farm that's under 100 cows, you could very well be the only hired hand. So it can also be, um, you know, very independent. And and for some of the smaller farms, a part-time arrangement might be really attractive. A lot of vegetable farms, part-time arrangement might not be as attractive. They're very different industries, but it's good to hear. I didn't realize that, Dan. That's great. Patty asks, are you associated with a college or a university? I think the answer is no. Is there any? I mean, we have a university right in DVA. Is Dickinson a host or are they not?
Oh, not currently, no, but they were a contributor to our curriculum. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, Pasa is a independent nonprofit, 501c3, and we have affiliated with technical colleges when we deliver related technical instruction for sure. In DGA and with Penn State Extension, we have a good relationship, but our accreditation as apprenticeship comes through Department of Labor and not Department of Education. Rose asks, do any of the farms you work with participate in agritourism practices? Yes, yes they do. Jess, you were on one with agritourism.
I was actually Hemo Farm in Mifflin County in Central PA. I would go so far as to say that agritourism is the main way that they made their income, and they also just happened to be a dairy farm. They had a girls' camp that came, and a big part of the farm camp for the girls to come stay there was to participate in like chores and help with raising the younger stock and things like that. Most farms that I've visited, even if they weren't formally, well, and also this was pre-COVID, so like everything I say is subject to change, but they were really open to having people with notice come and check it out anyway, even if it wasn't a formal agritourism practice.
Aaron, if I can offer just a quick follow-up on two things. One, there was a question about the farm maps and the farm availability. There's a discrepancy between the map I showed in the presentation. That is the newest and most up-to-date map. There is a map on the website for the apprenticeship program that is out of date. They come from two different systems, and we're having trouble updating the website version of that system. So, but yeah, so the map that we showed in the presentation is the most up to date. The other thing I wanted to just clarify that I don't think I said as clearly as I could have is that for apprentices or potential apprentices, the inquiry form, that initial thing that you would submit to just cover background, is linked on the PASA website. You would go to pasafarming.org, to the apprenticeships link, to the vegetable apprenticeship program, and then there is a button that's a couple points on the way down, a blue button that is become an apprentice, and there is a link to the inquiry on that page. So it's a couple clicks through, but there's lots of great information in the meantime, and we would definitely commend you to whichever program you're interested in, definitely checking out the websites and seeing if how that can be helpful to you.
Agritourism, Dan, any answer to that?
Yeah. Vegetable farms, it depends on how you slice agritourism. There was several with pick your own opportunities, several with on-farm markets or farm-based CSA pickups that then have kind of a farm engagement level to them. Yeah, I mean, if you're taking a broad definition of agritourism, I would say a fair number of our folks have some part or some component or some element of agritourism.
Folks, the eval was just linked by our coworker Gina, our tech expert. Please take a moment and do that evaluation when you're able. It's useful to us for a lot of different reasons. We have another question here. Is there a timeline for applications, or is it rolling / dependent on the relationship with the farm? For dairy grazing apprenticeship, it's rolling. We see matches made throughout the year, and Dan, I'll let you answer that as related to vegetable apprenticeship.
Yep, the vegetable apprenticeship is rolling as well for both applications and matches. The traditional vegetable hiring cycle is what most of the farms go by. So I would say most of our matches and most of our applications and engagement happen between October and April. So during that period of time is when most of the activity is going on as far as matching. But we have had apprentices start, very late in the season, June and July. We've had a few employees who elevated to become apprentices later in the season, and we did have a late start apprentice, I believe, who started in September or August recently. So yeah, definitely rolling. But you want to be to have the most options available, especially if you're trying to find a farm to match with. Be aware of the normal vegetable hiring cycle.
Yeah, and it's not that different for dairy. I mean, it's year round, but this is the time of year actually that most of the farmers they kind of lift their head up and they think about, well, what are we looking at as we come into the barn, into the winter? And they start looking, okay, I need someone in the spring, right? I need someone in late winter. But it depends on the farm. We have some farms that are actually calving now, trying to get that winter milk market. So one thing Dan did mention earlier is, about half of our apprentices are already working on the farm or are already connected to the farm in some way. That's a good way to enter apprenticeship. But the other half, they find the farm through a matching process, and that's a good way too. So I don't see any more questions. If anyone has a last burning question, please write it in the chat box. Jessica or Dan, if you have something else you'd like to note before we say goodnight, please.
Yeah, I would just say that on top of communication, it's about being proactive and being engaged. If you don't find the farm that you want initially, there is somebody out there. They just might not know about the program and might not be involved. So Apprentices recruiting farmers in has been huge for the DVA. Similarly, the value you get out of it is really dependent on how much you're engaged and how much you're putting in. So it's really, we're here as a backstop. We're here as a educational bolster and a support. But it really has a lot to do with the farmer and the apprentice themselves.
Yeah, I think patience is a good word in terms of finding the right farm. We have a lot of people who sort of enter the DJ system and they don't match right away. Or a farm might take their time sort of entering in, and then they might be there for a year or so, and then they find someone, and then they say, okay, I'm ready to engage. And I think that often sets you up for success when you're patient and kind of deliberate with the process, even if it's not going as fast as you want. Opportunity will arise in time. Okay.
The last thing I'll say is just if you wouldn't mind just taking a moment to fill out the evaluation. We really try to use those for feedback and for developing future programming. So it is really valuable. We take those quite seriously. If you are somebody who's interested in a detailed history of the development of the DVA, we do have a webinar recording from last fall that is posted via the website as well on the DVA apprenticeship pages, where you can hear me talk at greater length about how we actually arrived at this program, and then again, probably reiterating some of the details we mentioned tonight. But we didn't want to go through all of that again. So
I didn't want to.
But we want to thank you all for your interest. We really appreciate it. And even if this doesn't turn out to be right for you, please do keep us in mind. A lot of folks come to us via word of mouth, and awareness of these programs and engagement is really big for us, helping to grow them, helping to be as successful as possible as furthering sustainable ag in Pennsylvania and more broadly.